Hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another instalment of my ongoing weekly series Till the Fabled End, and I am here on this stormy, wet, cold, dark British day to discuss this, which is Fables Deluxe Edition in Book 9. This was the homework from last week. Now, let's dive straight into it. This is Deluxe Edition 9, as you can see here. This is the cover, boy blue, etc. That's Cinderella, in fact. This is the spine. This is the back. That's Big B fighting the adversary. On the inside flap we have this, which is the pull quotes. On the rear flap we have a biography for Bill Willingham. On the inside we've got some purple cityscape skylines as per standard. Let's get the dust jacket off, and underneath the dust jacket, as we will see, it is the same image as a textless variant of what was in the dust jacket. So there we go. Alright, quite thick relatively speaking. So what is in this? So let's start off by looking at the issues. Now last time round we looked at a deluxe edition that ended at issue 69, and as I mentioned, Vertigo series tend to go up to issue 75. So here we have issue 70 all the way through to 82. That means it collects two trades, the War and Pieces trade, which is that one, and then the Dark Ages trade, and, you know, the issues in between. This is a breakdown here. I found it a little bit tricky to track through myself what issue related to what part of what story, so I'm just going to show you the contents here myself. And then, of course, at the end you've got extra features. So let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. What's the buying quality like? It is excellent. The paper is glossy. The spine is tight. The quality is great. Really enjoyed it. Let's start leafing through. We've got an introduction here. One thing I will warn you, this introduction contains spoilers. So if you have not read the story itself, do not read the introduction until afterwards. And then we go straight into issue 70. So for this, what we're looking at is the opening story. This has got some slightly unusual artwork compared to what we're used to. As you can see, the style of the artwork is different from what we've seen in the normal issues up until this point. Clearly a little bit more cartoony. I quite like it, but it's quite jarring and quite different from what I'm used to. That's issue 70 anyway, and then issue 71 we get back into much more normal kind of Fable style artwork and framing and the like. The framing here, edge to edge, and just composed sort of in a much more conventional comic book way, whereas this goes back to the usual very, very carefully controlled framing that we're used to from the series. Yeah, what am I going to say? The first half of this, issue 70 to 75, so the War and Pieces trade paperback and a few other bits and pieces, is great. What can I say? This is great. This is a brilliant climax to the Fable story. It's fantastic. They go to the homelands, they attack the adversary. It's about a war. The whole thing is just great. It's well written. It's well paced. It is a fitting climax and denouement for the 8 deluxe editions I've read so far, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great. You can see that this was how the story was meant to end. You can see how this is how the denouement was meant to go. It's just brilliantly put together. Hats off to Bill Willingham for writing it and writing it the way that he did. It's just spectacular. I mean, it has moments like this. It's modern day warfare meets magical warfare, and it's just really interesting. You will not be let down. I'm not going to go into any spoilers, and I'm not going to talk about it in too much detail, because what I want to get through is the bit that happens after issue 75. So there's all this epic battle after epic battle, fighting the adversary in epic ways. It's just wild. But that takes us up to issue 75. And this is great. And that should have been the end of it. That really should have been the end of it. But the story carries on. And the story carries on, and I frankly... Well, first thing first, I read this and then took a bit of a break. I took like a break for an hour or so because it was just such an emotional roller coaster. It was fantastic. And then I came back and I thought, right, let's carry on reading it. And from issue 76 onwards, this is not good. Let me explain. There are times when a story has a clear ending, and having an epilogue or having something that follows it is just needlessly ruminating over a story for no good reason. That's exactly what this is. In the following issues from 76 onwards, we've got a slight change in artwork again, which I didn't really massively enjoy, because this is neither cartoony and anime or the usual Fable style. This is just some kind of weird, clunky, slightly functional artwork. The writing is okay, but what's happening with the story, what's happening with the characters, obviously back to normal artwork here, what's happening with the story, what's happening with the characters, it just didn't feel necessary at all. I'm finding out things that happen to the characters after the big war in the homelands with the adversary that I just don't feel is interesting. I don't need to know. I don't need to know what happens with these characters. I don't need to know what happens with their relationships and who they get married to and who eventually dies and who doesn't. Linked to that, there's this guy. Who's a new bad guy called Mr. Dark. That must have taken all of about 3 seconds to come up with this name. Don't know really who he is. Like, he's not a fable or anything I've heard of. The adversary, once you realise the twists and turns of the plot, is an incredibly clever antagonist with a really clever secret identity and everything. Mr. Dark is just some dude. Like, what is he, a vampire? He's got a rubbish name, unclear skill set, no idea who he is. What the fuck? Like, it's just not cool. He's got one power where he kills people, and I don't know if he's going to show it. He kills people, and then what he does is he eats their teeth, right? That sounds mental, right? He eats their teeth, and then uses it to control them and resurrect them and bring them to do whatever he wants, which is weird. Apparently he controls all the power for the witching well and the witching cloak and stuff. That's new. No one ever mentioned that all came from the same place. Who is this guy? Why would I care about what he does? In addition, there's all this stuff happening with our existing characters, which is just really freaking depressing. It's just, I don't understand what's happening. Well, I do. There were 75 issues and there was a clear, singular, coherent, great story. And now they're trying to limp on and trying to introduce another antagonist. And go, ooh, there's actually a bad guy behind the bad guy. There's actually a thing behind the thing. And they're even doing things like bringing back this trope of having Colin's head on a stick speaking to people in their dreams. They haven't had that since like issue 30. And they're suddenly bringing it back in. Give me a fucking break. This is scraping the bottom of a barrel that was only meant to be emptied, and that was the end of it. So this is just, it's frustrating. Cover's obviously still great. But essentially what's happening here is they're just flogging a dead horse. That's what it feels like. I have two main concerns. One, the introduction of an arbitrary antagonist we haven't seen before in the preceding 76 issues suddenly has turned up and is even bigger and badder and scarier than the last one. Really? Like, where have they been this whole time? Like, what is going on here? And secondly, the thing that I dislike about it is it's just showing us more about the characters that I'm just not interested in. Like, they reached a particular endpoint, and I was happy just to assume everyone lived happily ever after or grew old and died. Like, I don't need to see all this maudlin stuff about their relationships falling apart. Anyway, the story continues. As you can see here, a key character has died, you have a funeral, you have various stuff going on at the farm. Not a massive fan of the artwork, which keeps on switching between the conventional Fable style and this slightly cartoony style. It's okay. I don't really recommend or advocate it. It's slightly annoying to me that this exists in the middle of a deluxe edition. Because otherwise what I would do is, if this was the last deluxe edition of the series, I would just cut out these pages and get it rebound. I would literally just get it rebound there. Obviously there are several deluxe editions after this, so let's see what happens. I mean, maybe the story picks up. If it doesn't, then I may seriously consider binning the remaining deluxe. I say binning them, giving them away on my channel, and then getting this rebound. But we'll see. Anyway, that's the end of this particular volume. We then have the extras, usual sketches and the like, and then as usual, just a little bit of biographical blurb there. And that is the end of it. Sorry if I seem a little bit annoyed or down about this. What's the best way for me to describe this? If you play video games, what this is like is... I'll pick two relatively famous games. I'll pick Prince of Persia from 2008, which frankly is one of my favourite games ever. I know it had a divisive art style and so on and so forth, but whether you liked it or not, it had a singular coherent story from start to finish. And then after you defeat the bad guy, save the land, rescue the princess, It then has a random bit of DLC that you can download, which continues to follow the story of the prince and Elika. Um, and it's just, yeah, it's like, I don't need to see this. I don't need to see what happens next. And it's not especially interesting. And in fact, it kind of erodes the story up until that point. Perhaps a more famous example would be Bioshock. Where you have Bioshock 2, Bioshock Infinite, and then Bioshock Infinite had the Burial at Sea DLC, which kind of combines all three games in a reasonably clever way, but actually wasn't very fun to play and didn't really add enough. I was kind of like, once I got to the end of Bioshock Infinite, I was happy with the end of that. I don't need to see this like nerfed version of one of my favorite characters doing other annoying stuff until they eventually die. It was like, this isn't cool. This is just more for the sake of it. If you're not into video games but you watch movies, then there are a million examples here. Look at Matrix. You've got Matrix 1, 2, and 3. And then Matrix 4 came out and said, I could have definitely done without this. Matrix 4 had pros and cons, mainly cons, but it's like, I definitely could have done without this. And that's kind of what I feel like with this. Now, I'm going to reserve judgment, or further judgment, on the basis that there are another 6 deluxe editions for me to read. So then it may well turn around and just be amazing and blow me away, and I might regret having made this video and I might apologise for what I've said. But right now, if this was just 9 deluxe editions, I would say the first 8.5 of them are amazing. And then this epilogue stuff of what happens after the war with the adversary, it just kind of sucks. Obviously, I'm going to carry on reading them because I have them all on my shelf. But I'm a little bit disappointed. I really hope that Fabled didn't continue on to the full 150 issues before it stopped, purely due to editorial mandate. I really hope Bill Willingham had a clear story and idea and premise behind himself. But let's see. Homework for next time, everyone, is book 10 of the Fables Deluxe Editions. I'll see you then. Fingers crossed it takes a turn to the better.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.